All right, so inspiration, everybody. Inspiration. I I like inspiration. I'll be honest. I like inspiration in D&D 5e. If you guys don't know what inspiration is a reward that you get from the dungeon master. You know, it's not like bennies in Savage Worlds where you automatically get 3 bennies at the start, or 4 if you have certain lucky edges and stuff. Inspiration is something that you earn. And inspiration is you get advantage on any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. It gives you advantage. And if you don't know what advantage is in D&D 5e, advantage is you roll twice and take the best result. So if you roll a 20 and a 3, you get to choose a 20. But there's disadvantage. Disadvantage works the opposite. And really, inspiration doesn't have to do with disadvantage, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Disadvantage is you roll twice and take the worst. So if you have disadvantage on an attack and you still had that 20 and a 3, then you would be forced to take the 3 because you have disadvantage. All right? That's what inspiration is. And you can only have 1 inspiration at a time. You can do a lot of things with inspiration. You know, you can think of inspiration as a spice, and this is out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, everybody. This is page 240, 241, in the Dungeons & Dragons 5e DMG. The 5e DMG is probably the best DMG that I've ever read. Seriously, and I've read all of the DMGs. This is probably the best that I've read. Inspiration is think of it as a spice with which you can enhance your campaign. And it even says here, some DMs forgo using inspiration, while others embrace it as a key part of the game. I want to embrace inspiration, but a lot of the times, the players are supposed to get this as a reward for inspiration, and I do give out inspiration from time to time, but I want something to really grab me and say, wow, that deserves inspiration. And I do give it. I don't give it out a whole lot. I think 2 people in my Sunday game, Gimli Grim and Orange Autumn, they both have inspiration because they had excellent role play. And I gave them inspiration. And that's what, that's how you're supposed to reward your players' inspiration. Now, there's a rule of thumb here. It says aim to award inspiration to each character about once per session. That's a lot. I mean, if your players earn it, go for it. But just don't give it to them. Don't start the session and say, okay, everybody has inspiration. I did that to start the game. But then after that, they got to earn it. And you might want to, over time, you might want to award the inspiration more or less often, depending on how the players are, playing and whatever's best for your game. Phoenix, thanks for the follow. I think you followed before, but thank you again, Phoenix, for the follow. I really appreciate it. You can even take inspiration out of the game altogether. You can do that too. There's nothing saying that you have to have inspiration. But inspiration is definitely a reward for your play. And here's some examples. You can get, for role-playing, you can get inspiration. And you can give inspiration to reward the role-playing, which is a great place to start. And this is what is mentioned, this is what is heavily mentioned in the Player's Handbook, in the How to Play section, describing what inspiration does and what inspiration is. So role-playing is the primary focus on how to get, according to the Player's Handbook, on the way to get inspiration. And if there's a great role-play section, if they actually turn the tide of maybe a courtship with a king or a queen, give that person inspiration, like I gave back when I played, and this is back in 4th edition, but inspiration and action points, you can award players action points. Why not? You just don't have to worry about going 2 encounters. But I gave Leopold, he plays Leopold Kane, he played a rogue, and they were basically in a courtship with Sir Keegan, and this is in the Keep of the Shadowfell. And they were actually on the verge of failing this skill challenge, and then, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Leopold came in. He was their last chance. And then Leopold came in with this amazing RP on, this is what we can do for the realm. You've done this for the realm. You need to help us accomplish what you want to accomplish. And oh my goodness, it was something that it moved me as a DM. And I was taken by that. And I said, holy shit. So I just automatically made them succeed on the skill challenge without even making him roll. And that's when I gave him an action point. And that would work the same way as giving a player inspiration if something like that happened in your game. And you know, and when you're a DM, you can tell. You can just tell when that moment, you know, when you're a DM and when you get sucked into that state of nirvana, when you're just listening to your player and you're just drooling, DMs love that and they eat it up. So award your, you know, if you do use inspiration, award your players or player that inspiration, because they'll do it again because they know they're going to get a reward for it. It's like a dog. Now, I don't want to compare the players to dogs, but I'm just trying to make a prime example. If you let the dog outside to go to the bathroom, he knows he's going to get a reward when he comes back in because he went outside. Same thing rewarding inspiration. They're going to keep the RP up just so they can get inspiration. It's the same concept. But I'm not, you know, I'm not comparing my players to dogs or anything, because I love my players to death. I'm just making that as an example. You know, so role playing, that's one way of giving your players inspiration. And like I said, that's what's talked about in the Dungeon Master's the Player's Handbook. You can give it for feats of heroism. You can use inspiration to encourage other players to take risk. You know, a fighter might not normally hurl himself over a balcony and land in the midst of a pack of hungry ghouls, but if he does decide to do it, reward him because of those daring maneuvers and the inspiration it probably gave the group to jump over the ledge too. So give that player inspiration for that feat of heroism. Why not? I mean, that's great. Maybe you can give inspiration for a reward for a party having a major victory. You know, you can do that. Maybe they beat the Mummy Lord. Maybe if they fight a legendary creature like a Mummy Lord or a vampire or an adult dragon or an ancient dragon, Tarask, Tiamat, any major legendary type of creature that is labeled legendary, maybe to give them, that's a feat in itself. So you could do something like that. Give them a inspiration token for that. I mean, you can do genre emulation. Inspiration is a handy tool for reinforcing the conventions of a particular genre. Under this approach, think of the motifs of a genre as personality traits, flaws, and bonds that can apply to any of the adventures. For example, in a campaign inspired by film noir, characters could have an additional flaw. If they live up to their flaws, if they live up to their ideals, if they live up to their bonds, give them inspiration. And that's one thing about, to go outside of the box of D&D 5 here. Now that I'm starting to take a look at Savage Worlds and the Benny system that it has, it also promotes the same thing. When you have hindrances for your character, which is a feature for every character in Savage Worlds, if your characters play to their hindrances, that's automatic bennies right there, man. That's that state of nirvana. When one of my players in Savage Worlds has one arm now because he got it bit off by a zombie. Basically, they had to cut his arm off. So now, if he's role playing his one-armed guy the way it's supposed to be role play, he's going to get tokens. He's going to get them handed to him like dog treats, man. But like I said, I'm not comparing anybody to an animal. But it's the same concept. So the genre emulation. Make sure that your players in D&D 5e are living up to their ideals, their bonds, their flaws, and their traits. When they do that, reward them. There you go. And the last thing, something that you can really do with your inspiration as a player, unless your DM, unless he or she says otherwise, the players can give their inspiration to someone else. So if I'm a player and I know that my one player doesn't have inspiration, I'm not metagaming that, but I would inspire them to do something. Maybe they were going in to attack Snaggletooth, the Orc Champion. I would inspire my group mate to get that advantage on the first attack or skill check or whatever that player did. So players, remember guys, players can give their inspiration to another player. It can happen. It says that in the player's handbook also. It's great. So here's some questions. I also have some questions too for you guys out there watching. The 60 people that are watching this. So when do you guys award inspiration? I mean, you guys, I asked you before we started this, are there any D&D 5e DMs out there? About 10 people, a dozen people said there were. When do you guys give inspiration? Like I have here. Let's get some ways on how to get inspiration. Let's also talk about how we use inspiration. Do you allow players to do other things with inspiration besides just what the player handbook says? Player handbook says that inspiration allows advantage on any attack roll, skill check, or saving throw. But I'll even go as much as say this. I would allow a player to attack again if he could convince me and role play this out to where he could woo me. And believe me, dungeon masters, they love to be wooed. You love to be wooed, dungeon masters out there. So if a player come to you with a different or an alternative way to use their inspiration, would you allow them? I would. It would just have to depend on the wooing factor and the circumstance of what was going to happen from that. So, and there's some optional things that we can do also with, there's a variant rule here at the very end. I don't know how that would work out, but hey, maybe I might try that out. We'll talk about that last. Yeah, we'll touch on that in just a few minutes there, Phoenix. So, everybody was a DM 20 minutes ago. So how do you guys award inspiration? Dalton Helms, you allow for metagame stuff. If someone is being a dick to the rest of the party and another member of the party happens to have inspiration. So I'm kind of lost on that. Sometimes you allow for metagame stuff. Okay, alright, I gotcha. So you'll turn the monster on the player if they all cash their... Okay, I gotcha. That's definitely interesting. Yeah, let's put that down, shall we? Well, that's I want to know these reasons. I want to know these different ways to using inspiration. Every DM's different. There's no right DM. There's no wrong DM. Every dungeon master is different. They are. So you allow players to turn monsters on other players by using inspiration. Oh man, that is pretty crazy. That's definitely an unorthodox way, of using inspiration. I'll tell you what, it's like I was talking about the case with Leopold Kane in my 4th edition game. I would, I would allow, like I said, I would allow them to use inspiration like an action point. If they want to take another action, sure. If they can woo me enough, I'll let them take another action, sure. Why not? There's no rule saying that you can't do it, but it means an action. It doesn't mean a series of actions. It doesn't mean that all of your actions are going to reset. Sort of like action surge. Action surge means an action, not a flurry of actions like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take extra attack again and get 4 more attacks for action surge. It doesn't work like that. Action surge is one action. Player's Handbook. Check it out. But I would allow them to use their inspiration like action surge. Why not? If they want to take an extra movement, sure. I don't see why not. Sure, why not? I have no problem. Kaioken, that is a beautiful way to allow someone to use their inspiration. To allow someone to stop a failed death saving throw. Kaioken, that's probably the best one that I've seen. I love that. And in fact, I would allow my players to do that too. Right off the bat, just looking at that, I would. Phoenix says, Phoenix WL, good to see you, Phoenix. Haven't seen you in a while. He uses inspiration for advantage only, but would grant advantage without inspiration on rolls when it makes sense. I agree with that. I agree with that, Phoenix. I'm definitely okay with allowing someone to stop a failed death saving throw. I'm totally 100% cool with that. Even though it's not in the book, and people would, some folks think that the book is the end-all be-all, and the sky is going to fall if you change the rules. But I totally agree with that. I would allow a player to do that with inspiration. I don't, Regina17, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. I'm a tabletopper. I agree with that. I don't think I would allow inspiration to gain information about the game, because the players should be immersed into the game enough to where they should be thinking on the level of the game and trying to think of all of the hook points and the twists and the plots. And I don't think I would do that either, tabletopper. No, I embrace new players, Dalton Helms. Most of the people in all of my games, they're all new players. I have a soft spot for new players because I've gone through a lot of the forums on Roll20, and they say no new players. I don't want to teach any more new players. How is this genre of gaming going to survive with an attitude like that? And I'm not trying to be mean to the dungeon masters. I'm not gonna name drop anybody, but seriously, how is our genre gonna survive another 20 years? If it's already 1,000 to 1 ratio anyway. It's probably 1,000 players to 1 DM. Why are you gonna segregate probably 500 of those players? So I have a soft spot for new players. Yeah, Roger. Roger, I know you DM. You said you've DM'd a few times. So, Roger ZBT, what are some of the ways that you use inspiration? Kaioken, yeah, one shot, yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to see these, Roger. I definitely want to see other ways to allow people to use their inspiration. Their DMs allow them. Yeah, you got to have a soft spot, man. New players are so fun to have, man. I really enjoy having new players. I mean, I can't tell you guys how many times I've done these one-shots where I've had 5 brand new players that have never played D&D at all. Never. And they loved it at the end. And they said, "Oh, thanks, this is so much fun." That makes me feel good, man. That makes me feel good inside that I just brought 5 new people into a genre that doesn't have a lot of people to begin with, not like the video game, genre. So it makes me feel good. I did my job. That's what I do the one shots for, is to promote games to new people. That's what I do. So Roger, what do you think? What are a couple of suggestions you have for creating ways that the players use the inspiration in your games? And hey, you don't even have to be a DM if you're a player. Let's hear some of these ways. Yeah, Jub. A lot of people say on Roll20 they don't want new players. It's unfortunate. Yeah, that's cool, man. You're quite drunk, Roger. I thought you were gonna. I'm gonna give the woo factor. I'm gonna type in woo factor. Woo your DM with another way to use your inspiration. You don't have to follow the book, guys. It's just a guideline. Books are a guideline, and that's a good thing too, Sparty. A lot of people do forget to use inspiration. A lot of people are scared to lose that point of inspiration. They wrap it up and they put it under their arm and they tuck it down there and they're cradling it and they're saving it because they're so scared to use it because they think that they're never going to get another one. And use it. Use it. You'll get more. That's hey, use it. Jub says, what about when a person goes and prays to his god at a shrine? They use inspiration to get a hear or a blessing from their god. That's something that we talked about last night, Jub. Other rewards for your players instead of just giving them potions, scrolls, and magic items. Give them blessings, give them charms, give them some type of small little trinket that will probably dissipate over time, and give them like a temporary +2 to max con or +2 to max strength for a certain amount of time. You can do that. You could do that, but I would still have a religion check still involved. Jub, they could have the advantage on the religion check. You know what I mean? That would be cool. What's that, Dalton? At tabletopping, none of my players have done it, but I just realized the way I purposed a use for inspiration could break some encounters. So you might want to make some rule where it can to be used once combat starts, or yeah, I see what you're saying. But I think that's those are some good ways. Woo your dungeon master. Allow someone. I definitely think the allowing someone to stop a failed death saving throw. I mean, Zerker would have loved to have been able to do that. Remember about 6 months ago, and Zerker had one failed save already, and then on his next turn he rolled a 1 and critically fumbled, and that killed his character. He had inspiration, but if he would have came up and said, Dave, can I use inspiration to pray to my deity? I would have said yes, and I wouldn't have let his character die. So that's a great thing right there. I definitely allow that. I would allow that. You know, allow players to turn monsters on other players by using inspiration. That's possible. That would be great for like an evil themed campaign. Use their inspiration like an action point, maybe in 4E, or a Benny from Savage Worlds. You can do all kinds of stuff, man. All kinds of stuff. Maybe use a Benny for an automatic critical hit. Would you do that? Seems a little... Maybe if inspiration in your game is a little bit more rare, maybe you could think of doing something like that. Allowing a player to use inspiration for an auto crit on a successful to hit roll. So it's not like they're just going to say, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and hit with a crit hit. No, if they make their attack roll and they hit, maybe they could be inspired to have some type of thunderous energy coming from their god to, you know, enforce a critical strike on that target. I could see that, sure. If a player wanted to woo me and they wanted to sell it on me, sure. Just woo me. Why not? Sure. So let's go ahead and get back to you know, other things about inspiration. How do you guys track inspiration? You know, you can use these gems that I have. You know, these gems that I'll put in front of the cam. If you're playing around a camera, these little, you know, little beads, little gems, you can, you know, give one of those to a players. You can get poker chips. If you're playing on a virtual tabletop, on your token, if you're playing on Roll20, you can, you know, set one of the variables up on the token to hold an inspiration. There's all kinds of ways that you can track the inspiration, or just, you know, have your board here and just write the name down with inspiration. Easy ways to do it. All kinds of ways. Ignoring inspiration. You know, and this is talking about how inspiration may not work for your campaign, because it says that some DMs feel that it adds a layer of metagame thinking, and others feel that heroism, role-playing, and other parts of the game are their own rewards that don't need incentives like inspiration. If you choose to ignore inspiration, you're telling the players that your campaign is one where you let the dice fall where they may. I like that analogy. It's a good option for gritty campaigns, or ones where the DM focuses on playing an impartial role as a rules arbiter. Basically going old school. It's like telling your players, we're rolling 3d6 straight on down the line. Strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma. Start rolling 3d6. Strength is your first roll, dex your second roll, so on, so on, so on. It could be the same way. Excuse me, I had a cough. So, and the last thing that we'll talk about is this variant rule that you can take a little bit of stress off of yourself as being a dungeon master. Maybe you will allow your players to award inspiration to themselves. Think about that. I mean, just take a couple seconds and think about that. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of this variant rule, but that's why it is a variant rule. So, as a DM, you have a lot to track during the game. That's obvious. Sometimes you can lose track of inspiration and forget to award it. As a variant rule, you can allow the players to handle awarding inspiration entirely. During every session, each player can award inspiration to another player. A player follows whatever guidelines the group has agreed on for awarding inspiration. This approach makes your life easier as a DM and also gives the players the chance to recognize each other for their good play. You still need to make sure that inspiration is being awarded fairly. So that's what you need to really make sure of. If you do this, if you use this, variant rule for, allowing players to award their inspiration, you would definitely need to make sure that there's some guidelines, some rules, some boundaries, and you need to make sure that it's awarded fairly. This approach works best with the groups that are focused on the story. It falls flat if the players merely manipulate it to gain advantage in key situations without earning inspiration by way of good role-playing or whatever other criteria the group has established previously beforehand. In this variant, you can allow each player to award inspiration more than once per session, but if you do so, the first time that a player awards inspiration in a session is free. Whenever the players award it later in the same session, you gain inspiration that you can spend to give advantage to any foe of the player characters, so the enemies or the NPCs that they're fighting. There's no limit to the number of inspirations you can gain in this way, and unspent inspiration carries over from one session to the next. So I don't know if I'm too big of a fan of allowing the players to award inspiration, because I think sometimes the meta will come into play on that. But I think this could be actually a good system, even though it probably wouldn't be my first choice. I would be open to trying this. I most certainly would be open to trying this, and in fact, I may start allowing them pretty soon to try that, because I would like to see the whole, the guidelines, because I would like to set some guidelines with the players, as long as it is, as long as it does warrant them, awarding inspiration, as long as it's within the guidelines. I wouldn't. And plus, like it says, as this variant, I have a lot going on in the game, and it would take one layer of all the layers off, so that would be pretty cool. So I would definitely try that. So what do you guys think? Feel free to leave a comment down below. Also like the channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys next time.